Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm filming my very first dedicated review. Please feel free to give me constructive criticism in the comments about stuff that I missed out, some things that you'd like to know going forward with dedicated reviews. I thought it'd be fitting for my first dedicated review to be for an arc. Going forward, I'd like to do dedicated reviews for all arcs that I've acquired and read. So I think that's pretty much it, and without further ado, I'll get started. So today I'm reviewing Lore by Alexandra Bracken. So I got this e-arc from NetGalley, and I'm pretty sure the publisher is Disney, so thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to read this ahead of time. So the book release is today, January the 5th, so hopefully I will get this edited and uploaded by today, if not maybe tomorrow. So Lore is a standalone fantasy novel. It is YA Greek mythology reimagining, retelling set in modern day New York City. So in this world, Zeus has punished 9 gods for their misbehavior. Every 7 years, for 7 days, these Greek gods are forced to participate in a hunt called the Aegon. During this 7-day period, these gods are hunted down by the descendants of Greek heroes. Some of these Greek heroes being Hercules, Perseus, Achilles, and some others. If any member of any of these bloodlines kills a god, they then take their place as the newer version of the god. So for example, if someone kills Aphrodite, they become the new Aphrodite. The only drawback being a new god means that you will now be hunted during the next Aegon period. You do, however, become immortal, and you do take on some of the abilities of the god that you killed. So at this point in the story, we have some bloodlines that have completely died out, and we also have some of the old gods who have already been killed. So in the story, we follow our main character Lore. She is a member of one of the bloodlines, and she is on this quest to take down a new god. During this Aegon period, she has joined forces with Athena and a long-lost friend of hers in order to bring down this new god. She was told that the friend she's in an alliance with was actually dead, so the fact that he's not dead has actually brought up a lot of emotions for her, and that's pretty much a good summary of where we are. There's a lot more that happens in the book, but I think that's pretty much all you really need to know going into this book. I think the best part of this book was the concept of this hunt, this Aegon period. I think it's so cool. For this particular book, I hear comparisons to Percy Jackson and the Hunger Games. Percy Jackson, for obvious reasons, these characters are descendants of not Greek gods but Greek heroes, but the Hunger Games and Lore do share that kind of fight to the death, kind of tournament competition situation. I think that's something that people really enjoyed. So I think the author definitely took these traits from these very notable franchises and has managed to create something unique and distinct without it being like a ripoff. So I think that's fantastic. This being a standalone, our author really couldn't go into the nitty-gritty details that I love in a fantasy, but that's totally understandable. If this was somehow expanded into a trilogy, I would have loved that, but the standalone is fine as well. I just personally really love details upon details upon details, but maybe that's just me. As far as writing goes, it's a very straightforward, kind of direct writing style. It's not incredibly stylized. There are some moments where the author tries to make it sparkle a little bit, but for the most part it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing wrong with it. It actually reads very fast paced. Once you get past some of these exposition heavy chapters, it does start getting really fast paced. Our characters go from one plot point to another plot point, though I will say that there are some chapters that are flashback chapters, and depending on how you feel about flashbacks, you might think it disrupts the story. I thought it really helped give background that was needed. So for the most part, I thought it was fast-paced, and these flashback chapters did give us room to breathe a little bit and to add context as to what is happening. As far as characters, some really shined more than others. Our main character Lore is a teenager, and she's already gone through some pretty heavy trauma. She's that kind of typical hardened hero who doesn't really trust easily, that type of character, and there's nothing wrong with her, but I thought she was pretty much what you see is what you get. So there was one moment where Lore's character was called into question, and it kind of involves one of my least favorite tropes or discussions, I guess, and that's when you have a character, so almost always a woman who's trained to be some sort of warrior, which Lore was trained to hunt. I really don't like when a person, which is almost always a man, tells a female warrior to remember to be a good person or her actions are bad. But given the context of the situation where everyone's like murdering everyone, and most of her actions are always done in response to someone, she's never really going out of her way to be cruel. She's just responding to people's actions with what she knows. And in this case, everyone, or a lot of people in her world, were raised as hunters. I don't know why that conversation even has to be had. It's just so frustrating, where you have like a very physically capable person being constantly told, remember to be a good person. And it's like, I'm bored and I'm sick of it. I'm fine with gray characters, and I don't even think Lore's that gray of a character. I think she definitely has like a good head on her shoulders, but like, she has to like kill people because that's the world she lives in. That's pretty much like the biggest peeve I have in this book, this like questioning her morals, her character. I don't need it. I didn't need it. I wouldn't even know where to begin writing a god's POV, much less someone who's like is as iconic as Athena. But I think the author did really well. She was my favorite character to see and to hear what she had to say. There is one particular chapter where Lore and Athena are talking about all the things that Athena has done according to the myths that men have written about her, and I think that was like my favorite chapter, and I loved reading it. Our childhood friend / love interest was probably like my least favorite. I by no means hated him or anything, but he was like not very intriguing. His whole characterization revolved around Lore, so he didn't really ever stand up on his own. There were maybe a few scenes where I got to really see him, but for the most part he was like bland and boring to me. Got some other fun side characters, and we got a little side LGBT romance, which I really liked. I thought it was cute. As for the main romance between Lore and her childhood like best friend, I'm probably not the best person to talk about romance. I'm always either like indifferent to it or I dislike it. Very rarely am I ever gonna like fall in love with another person's romance. So I thought it was boring. I thought it was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It was just there. I'm still not 100% sure on the ending. I will probably have to think about it more, but what I can say is that I don't think everyone's gonna love it, but I do think some people will enjoy the ending. It feels a little bittersweet. The author made some decisions that I don't know if I would have, but I totally respect the choices that she made. I can't go into like much more detail than that. And I was left with like the most important question, like, what is the point of this? And I don't mean that in dismissive, like, oh, this was pointless, but like, I definitely have to like mull over this ending. I think the ending only really wrapped up parts of the story that we were following, and I don't think it really looked forward to like the future of these characters. Like, I don't know what they're going to do with their lives. I don't know where they're going from this. It kind of just wraps up what they had to wrap up in the climax, and then that's it. So I wish I got a little bit more towards the end. I definitely don't think it's like an objectively bad ending where everyone's gonna say that sucks. I just think it's for some people. And as for like trigger warnings, the biggest ones that came to mind are sexual assault, references to sexual assault, some body horror references, death, people are dying, death of family members, things like that. Those are the only ones I can think of like off the top of my head, but I would just double check reviews on like Goodreads or Amazon just in case, if you have like more specific trigger warnings that you need. So overall, I would definitely recommend this to like a majority. Obviously, if you're not into fantasy, if you're not into Greek mythology retellings, it's probably not for you. This is set in a contemporary world, so you don't have to worry about this insane kind of world building. You only really need to know how this hunt, the Aegon period, really how it works, and that's pretty much all you need to know. If you are the type of person who reads the first chapter to kind of gauge the book, I would say read ahead past the prologue, because the prologue really like throws you into the middle of it and doesn't really explain into detail like what's going on. So I would read ahead until maybe chapter 5 to kind of get a good feel of the story. I would give this a 4 out of 5 because I didn't love the main romance. I thought it was average. I could care less about it. And also I didn't have that kind of gut feeling that tells you like this is a 5-star read. But I would recommend this to a majority of readers, since I'm assuming whoever watches this has some love for either The Hunger Games or Percy Jackson or both. So that concludes my review. Feel free to comment down below your thoughts on anything I talked about. Feel free to give me your like critiques on my reviewing. I know reviewing is like subjective, heavily subjective depending on the reader, but I wouldn't mind hearing them. I will link all my socials down below. Once again, thank you to NetGalley and Disney Publishing Group for giving me the opportunity to read this ahead of time. Lore comes out today, January 5th. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.